Hey, it's me, Morona Prophecy. Okay, why does it look like I'm looking down at y'all? Okay, so we're gonna get into it. We're gonna take a trip on the other side. We're gonna go out of space for a moment. Gene Hackman. How many how many of all of you all remember the strange things that happened behind his death? And or well, him in the death of his significant other, his wife. Okay, they were secluded, they were in a bunker, they built it. It was weird things. The bunker, they had this bunker to where that they perished in their home, right? It was closed or sealed up from the inside. So as you begin to listen to this story and this story unfolds, right, it makes you think of, these are people from Hollywood, okay? So it's already strange circumstances because of their belief system. Now, we don't know his religion and or his faith or if he had one. But I want to say one thing from what I'm getting, him being in the industry, I'm thinking, I don't know where he learned it from or whatever, but he's channeling spirits. There were also artifacts. I don't know if they were ancient, but there were artifacts, and the way his home was structured in the inside, it was like things from out of this world. You get what I'm trying to say? They also said that they found a tunnel underneath Gene Hackman's home. All right. And, just it's very eerie how they said, everything that was going on, the papers, in his home, how they found stone artifacts with inscriptions on them, I want to say. But were those sigils or, and just the whole thing, allegedly conspiratorially, if that's a word, but okay, what was this man in? What was his belief system, him and his wife? Were they preparing for the end times? Were they preparing perhaps for the apocalypse? Were they preparing perhaps for the end of the world, Armageddon, War of the Worlds? But were they also summoning deities and spirits, aliens from out of this world? I think that they were, because of just everything surrounding his death. His dog had some kind of illness, but it was like viral illness or something. Just real strange. They say even his death, the way that they wrote it down on paper, like once you have the autopsy, that it didn't line up. So it was some things that were being covered up. And I just want you guys to hear the strange story, and then we'll get into it a little bit about how I feel regarding this situation and my commentary and what I think is really going on with this situation. And that's why you have to be careful what you believe in, folks, because the things that you believe in or you tap into, these are the things that eventually begin to overrun you. And so I don't know, it leads you to your destiny. And he was real old, he was real frail, he was off the grid, he was out of Hollywood, and they don't let you go. And I know there is a chance that you can get out, but you can only get out through Jesus Christ. And he was not believing in Jesus, neither was his wife. So that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to say that you wonder, why was he isolating himself, like he was barricading himself into his home, as if he didn't want nobody to get to him or his wife, and they were willing to die in there, isolated from off the grid from the world. And the hard terrain that he lived in, also, that he needed help, but there was no help there. I mean, like outside help to keep up the landscape, just everything. So you guys are going to hear, and then you make your own assumption, your own opinion, but it's just very strange. I have some insight in the middle of this to where I think that it compares to, but I don't want to spoil it. So let's watch this, and then we're going to get into it, okay? Okay. God bless everybody. Thank you.
He died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a rare infectious illness.
40 feet beneath Gene Hackman's private library, An FBI agent's flashlight caught something that made him stop moving. An iron door. No handle, no hinges on the outside. Just rivets, rust, and a bead of weld running along every seam like a scar. Someone had sealed this door from the inside decades ago and never come back out. Whatever the Bureau pulled out of the darkness behind it was never supposed to see daylight. And what it reveals about one of Hollywood's most private men will rewrite the way you see the last 30 years of his life. The breach, February 26, 2025. Just after 11 in the morning, a small convoy of federal vehicles rolled up to a towering set of reinforced steel gates hidden deep in the Pinon forests outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Behind those gates sat a $4 million compound, the private estate of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, classical pianist Betsy Arakawa. Nobody had seen or heard from the couple in days. Phone calls unanswered, staff turned away. Complete radio silence from a property that, under normal circumstances, operated with the discipline of a small military installation. It wasn't family, a friend, or law enforcement who finally raised the alarm. It was a handyman. He told deputies he believed the couple had died inside. The gates had to be forced.
Look how frail he was. Do you guys see? He needs help from the outside, but I'm pretty sure they refused that.
Locks had to be cut. That detail alone told the agents something was off. This was not a property where someone accidentally left the door open. Everything about the compound was engineered to stay sealed unless someone on the inside chose to open it.
You hear that?
When officers finally crossed the threshold, they expected something tragic but ordinary. Two elderly people passing quietly in isolation. That is not what they walked into. Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were discovered inside the mansion, along with the body of their dog. Investigators would later confirm that Betsy had died roughly a week before Gene. Her cause of death was recorded as a severe viral infection, his as heart failure with contributing factors, natural causes, case closed on paper. But the scene did not match the paperwork, not even close.
You see?
The contradiction no one wants to explain. Here is where the whole thing starts to buckle. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department told the public from day one that there were no signs of foul play. That's the standard language, the kind meant to put a story to bed before it grows legs. But in the very same statement, they admitted the scene was suspicious enough to require a full forensic search of the entire property. Stop and read that again. No foul play, but suspicious enough to bring in federal teams with thermal imaging equipment and forensic specialists. Those two statements do not live in the same universe. And that contradiction is exactly where the story cracks wide open. The timeline itself raises questions nobody has been willing to answer publicly. Betsy died a full 7 days before Gene. That means Gene Hackman, a 95-year-old man, was alive in that house with his dead wife for up to a week. No call for help. No attempt to reach the outside world. Not a single message from a man who still had the mental faculties, according to those who knew him, to hold a full conversation only weeks earlier. What keeps a man silent for 7 days in a house with a loved one's body? Fear, duty, grief so deep it locks the throat? Or the knowledge that calling for help would mean letting strangers inside, and strangers would find what was underneath. Before this goes any...
Because they said something, hold on, you guys, let me say something. They found a lot of stuff. They found ancient art. Well, they said they're not. Well, they're hundreds of years old. Tunnel. They found a tunnel underneath his home. They said that it was not built by him. I'm thinking he said not by the owner either. So they were just it was like they were almost, what do you call those? Archaeologists. You get what I'm trying to say? That's what it looked like. He was searching for something, or he was hearing from something and searching something out on his own, and or he was preparing for something. Let's continue. And hiding from something.
One thing needs to be said plainly. If even half of what investigators documented beneath this estate is verified, This becomes one of the most disturbing discoveries tied to a celebrity death in modern American history.
You hear that?
Now, sources have obtained the official search warrant. What authorities documented inside that property goes far, far beyond a death investigation. Because hidden behind a wall in Hackman's private library, federal agents found something none of the staff, the neighbors, or local law enforcement ever knew existed. A tunnel, sealed for decades. And whatever was locked inside it, someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make certain it stayed buried forever. But the tunnel was not the worst part. The worst part was what was already waiting at the bottom. The fortress on the hill. To understand what the Bureau walked into underground, you first have to understand what was standing above it. Gene Hackman's estate was not a home in any recognizable sense of the word. It was an installation. Dense forest hugged every side of the property.
You see that?
Towering
Massive.
stone walls ran around the perimeter. Motion sensors sat at every access point. Thermal cameras. A 24-hour surveillance grid whose sophistication reportedly rivaled the perimeter of certain government black sites. The staff were hand-picked, extensively vetted, and bound by legal agreements written so tight that not a single one of them has ever spoken publicly about what went on inside those walls. Think about...
Now, hold on. Was Gene Hackman working for the government? He was under contracts and or, here we go again, with celebrity news, right? Hollywood. NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements. He was under... or his property or whatever, just him in general as a celebrity in that status. He was under contracts. Like you can't disclose his information, or he can't disclose it out, or other people who find out his information, they can't disclose it. So what were they hiding? What were they hiding, folks? Let's continue. But before we continue, I want to read something to you right fast. Now it's time for me to let you know kind of how I feel, like, you know, what I'm thinking, right? Okay, now remember, and we're going to go back into the video, right? But remember Heaven's Gate? Do y'all remember Heaven's Gate? Okay, Heaven's Gate was an American new religious movement known primarily for the mass suicide of its members in 1997. Often described as a cult. It was founded in 1974 and led by Marshall Applewhite, 1931 to 1997. And then, you know, was his, when he lived and died, right? And then Bonnie Nettles, 1927 and 1985, known within, let me take this gum out of my mouth. I'm sorry, y'all. Hubba bubba. Okay. I apologize. Okay, look. So, Bonnie Nettles, 1927 and 1985, known within the movement as Do and T.I. So it's D, capital D-O, and capital T in lowercase I. I don't know what that stands for, but it says Do and T.I. respectfully, right? Nettles and Applewhite first met in 1972 and went on a journey of spiritual discovery. See, I knew it was something. Now we're getting into it. Identifying themselves as the two witnesses. And this is Heaven's Gate, right? But I'm just saying, a lot of these people believe in the same thing because it's widespread, right? So when I'm thinking of Gene Hackman, why I'm getting Heaven's Gate? Like, I think he was doing something. Now, this is just my opinion that, allegedly, right? What if he was running a cult? Or what if a cult was running him? And what if it was a group, right? A sect off, S-E-C-T off, of some type of religious faith, right? What if they were, planning on leaving Earth? Or what if they were joining union with these fake UFOs, right? You know what I'm trying to say? The disclosure. I mean, they're all believing in this thing because they have been indoctrinated into Hollywood. Don't forget. So whatever Hollywood believing in, these people is believing in this stuff too, right? So, anyways, let me see what else. Okay, so Heaven's Gate was on a journey of spiritual discovery, identifying themselves as the witnesses of the book of Revelation, end times, Armageddon, the apocalypse, right? Which is true, but not in the aspect of how they believe. It's biblical, right? So, but they believe in something else. As you see, they're no longer here. They have been abducted by aliens, committed suicide. They ain't here, right? Okay, so look at Gene Hackman and his wife situation. What really happened? Yeah, they were frail. Yeah, they were in old age. Yeah, they were due to perish any day. But I'm just saying, now knowing and we seeing all of this, it's not too far fetched because these people believe in UFOs. Now let me skip down to this and let me tell you a little bit more. Now, scholars have described the theology of Heaven's Gate as a mixture of Christian I can't even pronounce this word, but I'm gonna try. Millennialism. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. It's like millennial, like the millennial. I can't even say it. Millenianism. You pronounce it, okay? But New Age, okay? And UFOlogy. And it has been characterized as a UFO religion. Gene Hackman, I'm telling you. The central belief of the group was the followers could transform themselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings by rejecting their human nature. Man, y'all, I'm telling you, it sounds like Gene Hackman. And they would ascend to heaven, referred to as the next level or the evolutionary level above human. The death of Nettles from cancer, they always coming up with some kind of illness and or disease, and I know we die of things, but what I'm trying to say is Satan is the one who inflicts us and give us illnesses, okay? And cancer is a demon, and I don't care. This is deliverance ministry. I'm telling you what it is, okay? Cancer doesn't come from Christ. Cancer comes from the enemy. So the death of Nettles from cancer in 1985 challenged the group's views on ascension. Okay, while they originally believed that they would ascend to heaven while alive aboard a UFO. Come on, y'all. These ain't UFOs, these is demons. They came to believe that the body was merely a container or vehicle for the soul, that their consciousness would, got a lot of spit in my mouth, sorry. That their consciousness would be transferred to the next level bodies upon death. So, on March 26, 1997, the deputies of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department discovered the bodies of the 39 active members of the group, including Applewhite, in a house in the San Diego County suburb of Rancho Santa Fe. Wait, hold on. Rancho Santa Fe. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Let me read this. They have participated in a coordinated series of ritual suicides, coinciding with the closest approach of Comet Hale Bop, B-O-P-P. Just before the mass suicide, the group's website was updated with the message, Hale Bop. So whatever deity, Hale Bop, B-O-P-P, was the UFO that Heaven's Gates believed in, right? This brings closure to Heaven's Gates. Our 22-year of classroom here on planet Earth is finally coming to the conclusion. This is what they said. So they're graduating because they're committing suicide and they're going to die. Graduating from the human evolutionary level, we are happily prepared to leave this world and go with T.I.'s crew. This is what Heaven's Gate said, y'all. Now we're going to get into it. Now, hold on let me just look up something right fast where Gene Hackman died at. Okay, give me 1 second. We're going to turn back to the video. And if y'all can type faster, y'all tell me where he died at. Okay, here we go right now. We're finna find out. Look. Okay, look. So, Heaven's Gate was in Santa Fe, San Diego. Look, Gene Hackman died at his secluded home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on or around February 18th, 2025. Now, let me say that again. Heaven's Gate, they perished in San Diego, Santa Fe, right? Now, Gene Hackman died in his secluded home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Now, I don't know, that's neither here nor there, but I'm just saying, it's quite suspicious. Now, let's get into it. We ain't gonna tarry too long. Here we go, yo. Hold on. Here we go.
About that for a second. Decades of employees, gardeners, housekeepers, personal chefs, maintenance workers, private security, and not one leak, not one anonymous quote. In the age of social media, where sanitation workers post photos of celebrity garbage bins for engagement, that kind of silence does not occur by accident. It is enforced. Local journalists who tried to dig into the property's history over the years hit the same wall every time. Building permit requests came back with entire sections redacted. Property records had gaps that no clerk could explain. One researcher from the Santa Fe Historical Society reportedly spent months pulling land records tied to the estate, and then, without warning, stopped returning calls. Never published a word. Nobody knows what she found or who quietly asked her to stop looking. Step past those gates, though, and the interior was staggering. Hallways lined with original masterworks.
Look how
furniture
beautiful.
dating back centuries. Pieces reportedly once owned by European royalty.
Y'all hear that?
Chandeliers rumored to have hung in the halls of ancient palaces.
Ancient palaces.
Gardens filled with botanical specimens so rare they exist in fewer than a dozen documented locations on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an architectural historian at the University of New Mexico who later consulted on the property assessment, put it in terms that landed hard. I have documented estates all over the Southwest, she said. This one was designed like a museum built inside a military compound.
That?
The beauty was real, but so were the countermeasures. That combination does not happen unless someone is protecting something specific. Body cam footage, released only after a rare public ruling from a New Mexico judge, shows deputies moving through the mansion in the hours after the discovery. The silence on the audio is immediate and heavy. But what unsettled the agents most was not the quiet. It was the evidence that someone had been busy inside the house in the hours or days before officers arrived. Furniture dragged across hardwood floors, books pulled from shelves and restacked in the wrong order, drawers left ajar, a bedroom safe standing open and completely empty. Someone had been tearing through this house, either searching for something or hiding it. And then agents walked into the library, and everything about the case changed. The descent. Behind a specific section of wall in Hackman's private library, concealed so precisely that a person could stand in that room 1,000 times without noticing, agents found a hidden mechanism. Not a bookcase on a hinge.
You see that?
Not a latch behind a painting. This was an engineered entry point that required a specific activation sequence to open. Whoever designed it wanted it to be invisible to anyone who did not already know exactly where and how to look. Behind that mechanism, a narrow passageway opened up. Stone steps descending into total blackness.
You hear
no
that?
light source, no detectable ventilation. Just a throat of carved stone dropping straight down into the earth beneath the property. The agents went down. The temperature fell with every step. The air thickened, damp, metallic, carrying the taste of rust and something older. Condensation clung to the walls. Their flashlights swept across the stone surfaces, and that was when the first wave of unease hit. The walls were covered in markings, not graffiti, not decoration. precise inscriptions carved with tools and intention. Some resembled alchemical notation. Others looked closer to technical blueprints for devices and mechanisms that logically should not have existed in whatever era this tunnel was originally built.
So hold on. Is it safe to say that was he hearing from spirits? Was something trying to communicate with them, and or was he communicating with these demons or these fallen ones, and or perhaps the Nephilim? Was he was hearing from something, because he's making stuff like, that's why I said in the beginning, it's like how do you say it? Archaeological, when they go find hidden secret things, ancient things from, thousands of years ago. What was he into? What was he looking for? Did he discover something? Was something communicating with him and ultimately had him take his life, or had them prepare for this apocalypse and or Armageddon, and they went out too soon, because you're not even supposed to be taking your own life. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? So they were basically deceived by something. Let's continue. This was interesting.
One section of wall featured what appeared to be a schematic for a machine with no modern equivalent. Gears, chambers, conduits arranged in configurations that one forensic technician later described in his notes as engineering from nowhere.
Conduits. What is a conduit? You guys know what a conduit is. Okay, these people were in contact with spirits.
And the construction itself told a story of its own. Near the library entrance, the stonework was clean mid-20th century work.
Wow.
Industrial material, poured concrete reinforcement, straight machine-cut edges. But the deeper the agents descended, the rougher the walls became. Hand-carved joints, primitive reinforcement, tool marks consistent with pick and chisel work rather than any power tool. Marcus Devlin, a structural engineer who reviewed leaked photographs of the passage interior for an independent assessment, estimated that the deepest sections could be over 100 years old.
Wow.
Possibly considerably older. This was not built by the homeowner, Devlin said in an interview later suppressed by legal request. The upper section was renovated, modernized, reinforced, but the core of this tunnel was already here. Hackman moved into it. He inherited it. Then they reached the chamber. A vast underground space, frozen in time. Ancient wooden crates stacked against the walls. Some had collapsed with age, spilling their contents across the stone floor. Yellowed documents, rusted metallic objects. Artifacts that did not correspond to any identifiable era or origin.
Y'all see that?
One
Y'all
agent
hear
lifted
that?
the lid of a dust-covered box and found photographs. Fragile, curling at the edges, faces no one recognized, dressed in clothing from a century past. Some of the photos showed what looked like clandestine meetings in windowless rooms.
Was he teleporting, you all? Was he teleporting, like Back to the Future? What was he in? What were they doing? It was something ancient where he was living at the foundation too. So how did he get into this? Who got him into this? Who was he worshiping? What was he doing? Was he teleporting somewhere? Was he channeling deities and spirits? Of course that he was. It just reminds me of Heaven's Gate, okay, the cult. And was he doing something evil? Is there people buried under his home? There is bunkers, and there is a tunnel there, and there is areas that they cannot even get into yet because it's how do you say it? How do you say it when you're closed in? Barricaded. They're barricaded, you guys. Let's continue.
Others captured locations, buildings, underground spaces that do not correspond to any known place on official record. In one image, a group of men stood around a table covered in maps. Their expressions were tense. A single overhead bulb cast hard shadows across their faces. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a date in careful ink, 1937, and beside it, a single word in a language that has not yet been identified. Leather-bound files sat next to the photographs, filled with coded dates, redacted names, and passages describing events that appear to have been deliberately erased from the historical record.
Wow.
Some pages had been partially burned. Someone had tried to destroy them, then either stopped voluntarily or was interrupted. Other documents bore watermarks and insignia linked to organizations that were officially dissolved decades ago. The sheer volume of material was overwhelming. Agents estimated that fully cataloging what was stored in that chamber could take years, possibly a full decade of careful conservation work by a team of specialists working in shifts. Some of the paper was so fragile, it began disintegrating the moment a gloved hand touched it. Other pages, sealed inside oiled leather portfolios, looked as if they had been written the previous week. The gap in preservation quality suggested that whoever last accessed the chamber had known which materials were expendable and which were not. Among the recovered items were...
So yes, I'm going to pause it right there because I just wanted to give you guys some insight. I was curious to know too, was he in contact with spirits? And did these deities, these demons, take these people out even though they were up in age, well far in age, lived a long life, but just the fact that we know they were barricaded and isolated, they were so fragile, no friends, no family, off the grid, and then they were doing stuff like they were locating, searching, they were preparing for something, you all. Gene Hackman, God bless him. I hope that there is nothing bad that happened to them, regarding something that is not from here. You get what I'm trying to say? So Gene Hackman was definitely, him and his wife was definitely into something and believed into something extraterrestrial, something that was not from here. So you guys put a comment down below. I thank you for everybody that tuned in, and this had just caught my eye because celebrity Gene Hackman was a profound, astonishing star. He done so many things. He was in the black and white era with the the westerns, and your parents know Gene Hackman and grew up on Gene Hackman. So God bless you. My name is Marona Prophecy. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for stuff like this, okay? So shalom, and I'll be back. God bless you, and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, peace. All right.